So this is an interesting one. A couple of days ago, Zwift announced a change in their policy that comes into effect next week, tomorrow. From then, a rider's height and weight will no longer be public information. It's going to be hidden away. If you're racing me, you won't know if I'm 6'6" and 230 pounds, as I am, or if I'm 5'4" and 120 pounds, or at least you won't know what I've told Zwift that I am. At this point, I'm not entirely sure what to think about that. I've seen it discussed online, although not as much as I thought, and where it is being discussed, the type of conversation is going in the direction that you could expect it would. It's fair to say that people are not entirely happy. So I just thought I'd see what you all think and get some feedback, and perhaps use that feedback to shape how I end up feeling about the situation, especially if that feedback suggests that my gut reaction might be wrong. So first, let me just read what Zwift have actually said. Zwift is all about having fun, rewarding and positive experiences while hitting fitness goals. Lately we have heard from members of the community that a few bad actors have negatively affected their experiences. Zwift does not tolerate cyberbullying, hate speech, harassment, threats or personal attacks within the game or anywhere else. We take our community's welfare, including physical and mental health, very seriously. We have already undertaken a number of changes to support our members' welfare, and we have 2 additional changes that we'll unveil next week. First, beginning next week, we will no longer publicly display Zwifter weight and height in ZwiftPower, Zwift Companion, nor on Zwift.com. Weight and height will continue to be an input requirement for the game, but will no longer be displayed publicly in order to deter weight or height related harassment. They then go on to explain some of the changes they're going to make that will allow easier reporting of harassment. So they are making height and weight invisible to reduce the possibility of weight or height related harassment. And when I first read that, I assumed from that they meant that any knock-on effect it might have for people with eating disorders. They've actually since added some clarification though to their original statement, which includes this: height and weight can serve as unhealthy triggers for some, and we've removed them from public view for this reason. Pretty clear. Now, if you don't use Zwift, your height and weight is fundamental information that the software requires to work out how fast you are going in the game. That, along with your power, are the 3 bits of data that it needs to work out what speed you are doing. And cheating your weight and entering the wrong information is as simple as just entering the wrong information. You could cheat your power, but it's much more complicated, and you could lie about your height, and it does make a difference. My 6'6" data tells it that I am less aerodynamic than somebody shorter, but what really swings the balance is your weight. And so weight cheating, or weight doping as it's referred to, is a real thing. How much does it help? Well, here's an example. So this is a race that I did back in December. All the A's, all the B's, and then down here are the C's, of which I am one. I actually came 3rd in this race, did quite well. We look across, we can see that I did 3.2 watts per kilogram average, which is 316 watts because I weigh 100 kilograms. And then further along, we can see the watts per kilogram that I output for different durations across 20 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds and 5 seconds. And as you can see, my numbers are pretty good. 3.3 watts over 20 minutes, 3.6, 4.2, 5.2, 7.4, 8.6 and 9.5. Compare that to the other C's and it looks very nice indeed. In fact, that's why I came 3rd. However, the minute you start looking at the B category riders, and I'm close to getting bumped up to a B, suddenly 3.2, 3.3 watts per kilogram isn't that good. It would have me sitting over 20 minutes, somewhere around 20th, 21st, 22nd maybe. I'm certainly getting no way near the top 10 and a long way off the top 3. And of course, as soon as you go up to the A's, 4, 5 watts per kilogram even becomes common. I'm getting absolutely destroyed at that level. However, that's on watts per kilogram. If we turn it into watts only and effectively ignore weight, and then re-rank these based on maximum power over certain times, we can see that over 5 seconds, I'm in 4th place. Over 15 seconds, I'm 2nd. Over 30 seconds, I'm in the lead, more powerful than anybody else over that 30-second sprint. 1 minute, I'm down to, 5th or 6th. 2 minutes, about the same. 5 minutes, I'm still in the top 10. 20 minutes, not bad. I mean, looking at across the average for the whole race, I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5th, 6th place. 6th place out of the entire field. Better than any other B, certainly better than any other C, and actually better than the majority of the A's as well. If we go back to that 30-second duration, if it came down to a 30-second sprint to the line and weight was not relevant, everybody in that field is in trouble against me. In reality, no one's in trouble there because I am 20, 30, if not 40 kilograms heavier than the others. In reality, they'd be crushing me. So clearly weight doping is a thing that will yield real advantages. But if I enter my weight at 50 kilograms and start winning A category races, somebody would notice, especially as someone whose real size is a known factor. I talk about it on here all the time. But what if I was a normal person whose data is not quite so public, just an anonymous user, but with those same numbers, and I get bumped up from a C to a B, and I don't enjoy now coming at the bottom of that category. I don't want to win the B group, but I want to be fighting for the top 10 places because I just find that more fun, rewarding and positive. Sounds familiar? So I drop my weight maybe 10 or 15 kilos, not too much. My FTP though goes from 3.2 watts per kilogram to 3.5, 3.6, and suddenly I'm back chasing into the top 10 again. And I'm still entering 85 kilos. That's still a pretty high weight for a cyclist. In fact, if I fancy top 3 in the Bs, I've got some wiggle room to bring that weight down still lower and not look particularly suspicious. Except currently, if I did that, somebody would see they'd been beaten by me, they could look at my profile, look at my race history and say, hang on a minute, what's going on here? And I'm stuck unless I can explain that dramatic weight loss. As of tomorrow, they won't be able to do that because nobody will know what numbers I put in. They might momentarily see that my watts per kilogram hits 20 as I blast past them for the sprint finish, but that's about it. So here's my gut reaction to the change. And my gut reaction could well be wrong. Gut reactions are often ill thought out. Otherwise they'd be called brain reactions, wouldn't they? I think that it is possibly a daft idea to make private the most commonly inaccurately entered data. Just seems as though it's going in the opposite direction to the most called for change on Zwift, which is stopping people cheating. And cheat's most common tactic is to inaccurately enter that data. At least I think it's daft unless there is really good reason for it. Rereading their statement, and it almost seems as though there are two issues that I can't in my head link together, and maybe they aren't supposed to be. And I certainly can't link either of them to the change they're making. I'd be fascinated by the figures behind their decision, or even anecdotal evidence behind it. I think part of the reason for some of the online backlash that I've read on their change is that the initial statement almost seems to imply that weight-based harassment was in some way leading to triggering eating issues. They say, deter weight or height related harassment, and then go on to talk about disordered eating. And a lot of people just thought, is that even happening? One leading to the other, which is what I thought. My assumption was that where height and weight based harassment occurs, it's of the type where someone says, hang on a minute, you were 60 kilos and now you just beat me because you're 50 kilos. You're just cheating. And I can see how that sort of issue could lead to messaging backwards and forwards, arguments, abuse, as is common for all sorts of social media platforms, I guess. But you'd like to think that where Zwift were then asked to step in and adjudicate that situation, if somebody was cheating, they get banned. And just as, if not more important, if somebody was being harassing, they would also get banned. What I can't see immediately is that such encounters lead to eating disorders. I can see how harassing somebody over their weight in a more traditional context certainly can do. But are people doing that on Zwift? A cartoon cyclist going past each other, typing in abuse based on the numbers that they're displaying for their weight? I'm probably in the top few percent of heavy riders on Zwift as a wild guess. 230 pounds, there's not many cyclists up there. I've never encountered anybody mentioning my weight at all. No one's ever gone past me up out the Zwift, typing in some sort of ridicule that I'm going very slowly because I'm heavy, which I am. It just seemed odd. But their second clarifying statement does make more sense. Height and weight can serve as unhealthy triggers for some, and we've removed them from public view for this reason. I'm sure those numbers can trigger, in some people, unhealthy responses, and they are certainly removing them from public view. So that statement makes far more factual sense. Whether you agree with the action or not, it's very clear. It almost feels like they'd have been better off saying in the first place, 1, people are being horrible to each other and we won't tolerate it, and 2, having your weight displayed publicly for some people is a negative experience, and so we're going to ditch it. I'm sure some people would still be annoyed, but what you wouldn't have would be the group of people currently saying, hang on a minute, is harassment over weight leading to disordered eating on Zwift? Because in many people's minds, that's what the original statement seemed to suggest, that calling somebody out as a weight doper was going to result in them developing a serious mental illness, which doesn't actually help people, I'd have thought, with such a mental illness, because it sort of implies that it's a reaction to just being told you're cheating at something, which of course it clearly isn't. And people are wound up over it. Just flicking through some of the comments on the Zwift Insider article that covered this yesterday. Seems like a solution looking for a problem, get a thicker skin, they are ruining something, I don't understand. Someone says, I think this is a great move, but then gets marked down with loads of negatives. The decision is needlessly ham-handed, I don't like this, someone's going to leave Zwift, they say. The worst decision ever. This will increase cheats, they'll be impossible to stop. Very bad decision, please tell us it's an April Fool's joke, you get the idea. So yeah, it is a tricky one, and the more I think about it, the more I really don't know how I feel about it. I keep going back and forth. I saw a comment on here yesterday actually that said that maybe have height and weight hidden from Zwift normally, but on ZwiftPower, which is the website that collates lots of Zwift data so that if you race you can see an awful lot more information about your performance, have it still show up on there, because ultimately your weight is a fundamental, crucial part of your performance. And of course your watts per kilogram is still going to be shown anyway, and anybody with a calculator or a couple of brain cells can work out what your weight is from that, unless we're going to do away also with watts per kilogram, at which point it comes down to just watts. I mean, you can see a sort of bizarre scenario where ultimately it ends up with not giving your height or weight at all. In fact, why should I, as a very tall, very heavy person, be so disadvantaged against other more average people? I was teased at school for being tall, and now I'm being disadvantaged as an adult when I'm trying to just enjoy my hobby. Everybody should compete at the same height and weight, at which point I'm going to become an A category rider, and if you want to hit me up for some sponsorship, details down below. But the very sensible counter to the argument for having ZwiftPower still retain the data for the people taking it seriously is that actually it's the athletes who take it most seriously who are most often affected by these issues. The statistics for people with eating issues and competing in weight-based sports are not very good at all. In fact, I'll link again below to a really good article on ZwiftPower back in March talking about extreme dieting in relation to this. It is a real issue. Interestingly, my own experience is that in the past I've lost way over 100 pounds in weight, and I did that without stepping on scales once, pretty much. I looked in the mirror and thought I still look fatter than I want to be, so I carried on losing weight. But since I started using Zwift, I've been on the scales an awful lot more, way more than I ever have at any other point in my entire life, because I know that suddenly it does actually make a difference. Now, I'm in no danger of ever succumbing to extreme dieting. My weakness, my issue goes in the other direction. But I do understand the focus it can cause you to have on that number on the scale. If you are susceptible to taking that too far, I can see how it wouldn't help. But then, of course, the counter to that is that the people with negative eating patterns that are caused by wanting to be lighter to go faster, they are, I assume, actually too concerned about the number being visible. They're more concerned about the effect the number has, and that isn't going to change. They chase a lighter weight because they know it makes a difference, and one assumes they will still be motivated, perhaps sometimes to unhealthy extremes, to do so. And the only way to do so is to either be a lighter weight or lie. Again, unless they're actually going to make weight irrelevant, it will always be relevant. One of my kids, when he was younger, used to play basketball and wanted to be taller. So he would hang off of a chin-up bar all day long to try and stretch himself. If I said to him, we will never measure you again, we'll never discuss your height again, it will become private to you, he'd still want to be taller unless they're going to lower the hoop down for him. And before you think one of your kids is 6'7", does hanging on a chin-up bar work? No, that's the younger one. The older one is a normal height. Hanging on a chin-up bar does not work. Although maybe he was destined to be really short and actually got himself to average. Who knows? Ultimately, does it matter? I saw someone mention yesterday that if it helps just one person from these changes, then it has been worth it. And sometimes I roll my eyes at that sort of thinking because that's not how life works. If it was, we wouldn't drive anywhere, we wouldn't fly anywhere, we wouldn't leave the house because the cost of doing those things is literally lives lost. But as a society, we accept them because the price of not driving, not flying, not going out is too great. But really, what's the price being paid here? Upsetting some people that would probably get a bit annoyed if you stopped letting them pick the colour of sock they're wearing. I don't know, and the older I get, the more resistant I am to making snap judgments, mainly because I built up such a long history of them being wrong. What do you think? Good idea, bad idea, problematic? Could they have achieved the same results in a different way? Are you upset that I belittled the importance of sock colour? Check out the links that I'll put down below, especially that Zwift Insider article. The issue is clearly a real one that Zwift do need to have dealt with in some way. Leave your comments, think before you type, and bonus points if you can introduce me to a new perspective on it that I'd not thought of.